was the summer of 1878 in the quiet town of Amherst, Nova Scotia. A town where nothing unusual ever happened. A haunting began that would terrify a community and leave behind one of the most mysterious and chilling ghost stories in Canadian history. Esther Cox was an ordinary girl, 17 years old, shy, well-mannered, living with her sister Olive and Olive's husband Daniel Teed in a modest wooden house on Princess Street. The household was crowded. Esther shared a bedroom with Olive and 2 other younger children. The air was thick with summer heat, the kind that clings to skin and stirs unease. One evening in late August, Esther returned home, trembling and shaken. Her eyes were wide, her breath shallow. She had gone for a buggy ride with a male acquaintance, but something had gone terribly wrong. She didn't speak of it right away, not fully. She only said, "I was frightened. I don't want to talk about it." What Esther didn't say, but what everyone would later learn, was that her companion had tried to assault her, and the trauma of that night would unleash something terrible, something unexplainable. It began subtly at first, a strange feeling of being watched, an unnatural chill in the room. Esther would lie awake, heart racing, eyes wide in the dark. And then came the sounds, soft at first, like scratching behind the walls, then louder. Knockings, poundings, as if something inside the house wanted out, or worse, wanted in. Daniel Teed thought it was mice. Olive brushed it off as old house creaks. But Esther knew something was wrong. Terribly wrong. One night, as the family tried to sleep, a sudden shriek echoed through the room. Esther screamed, "I'm burning! My skin, it's on fire!" They tore off the blankets to find her body convulsing, her skin red and hot to the touch. And then, just as suddenly, it stopped, silence returned, and fear took its place. The next day, Esther tried to go about her chores, but her hands trembled. Her eyes darted to shadows, and then the bed she had slept in began to shake violently. The family stood, frozen, watching as the mattress rippled, as if something invisible moved beneath it. "God help us," Daniel muttered. But no prayer would silence what was coming. This was only the beginning. The next night, the terror deepened. Esther lay in bed, eyes wide, afraid to close them, afraid of the dark. Because in the dark, it came. Suddenly, the blanket flew off her body, as if pulled by invisible hands. Her pillow launched into the air and struck the wall with violent force. She screamed. Olive and Daniel rushed into the room, only to find the furniture shaking, the air ice cold, and Esther paralyzed with fear. They lit a lamp, but the shadows seemed thicker than before, moving, breathing, as if the darkness itself was alive. And then a loud bang echoed through the room. It sounded like a pistol shot. But there was no gun, no smoke, no source, only silence. And Esther, sobbing. By morning, the family had no appetite, no words, just silent glances, and the unspoken question, what was happening to Esther? They called the doctor. Dr. Kurite, a skeptical man, he examined Esther. Physically, she was healthy. No sign of disease. No infection. But then, as he packed his bag, he witnessed something that would haunt him forever. Esther's face twisted. Her eyes rolled back. She let out a scream that rattled the windows. And suddenly, on the wall behind her, scratched into the wood, were the words, "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill, Doctor." Kurite turned pale. This is not illness," he whispered. "This is something else." From that moment on, Esther was never alone. Something followed her, something angry, something cruel. And the manifestations grew bolder, loud banging on the walls, objects flying across the room, scorching temperatures that made the air hard to breathe, and always the voice, low, guttural, whispering threats in the dead of night. "Esther, I see you. You belong to me." The family stopped sleeping. Neighbors grew suspicious, and rumors spread through Amherst that the Teed house was cursed. Word spread quickly. Princess Street was no longer just a quiet road in Amherst. It had become a place of whispers, of fear, of superstition. Neighbors crossed the street to avoid the house. Children pointed and ran, and the townspeople began to murmur. Witchcraft, possession, demonic forces. But inside the house, the truth was far more terrifying. Esther was changing. Her skin was pale, her eyes hollow. She barely spoke anymore, except when the voice took over. Sometimes, in the middle of conversation, Esther would stop. Her head would tilt slightly, and a different voice, deeper, raspier, would speak through her. "You cannot save her. She is mine." And then she would collapse, unconscious, drenched in sweat. Daniel and Olive were helpless. No priest would come. No doctor would return. They considered sending Esther away. But where could she go? Who would take her? One night, as the family sat at dinner, a fork lifted from the table and spun in the air. Esther didn't move. No one did. Then the fork drove itself into the wall and stuck. A deep growl followed, low and beastly, as if it came from beneath the floorboards. The children cried. Olive fainted, and Esther simply whispered, "It's getting stronger." Desperation crept in. The next day, Daniel took Esther to a local clergyman, Reverend White. He listened, skeptically at first, but when Esther entered the room, books flew from his shelves. A crucifix shattered on the wall, and a gust of wind blew out every candle in the room. Reverend White turned pale. He crossed himself. This is not of God. He gave Daniel one piece of advice. Do not provoke it. And whatever you do not leave her alone. But that night, Daniel made a decision. For the safety of his children, he would send Esther away. Esther was sent to stay with a friend of the family, a kind-hearted woman named Mrs. Poole, who lived in a small cottage on the edge of town. The house was quieter, far from the chaos of Princess Street. But peace did not follow Esther. On the very first night, as Mrs. Poole offered her a cup of tea, the cup exploded in her hands. Shards flew across the room. Steam hissed in the air, and carved into the kitchen table appeared fresh letters. You can run, but you can't hide, Mrs. Phil, Poole screamed. Esther simply looked down, ashamed, exhausted, haunted. They tried to sleep, but the walls groaned, drawers opened and slammed on their own. And once again, the growling returned, deep, wet, like the sound of something not human. Mrs. Poole didn't last the night. By morning, she was packed and trembling. I'm sorry, dear, but you must go. Esther returned to the Teed home, and the activity escalated. Now it wasn't just noise. It was fire. Small flames appeared out of nowhere. On bedsheets, curtains, clothing. Once, while Esther was brushing her hair, her comb burst into flame in her hand. The family began keeping buckets of water in every room, ready at all times. They barely slept. They barely ate, and Esther was wasting away. One afternoon, Dr. Conrad returned, against his better judgment. He wanted to document what was happening. He brought a notebook and a healthy dose of skepticism. As he sat with Esther, a boot flew across the room and struck him in the chest. He gasped, looked down, and saw that the laces were tied tightly. But no one had touched it. Then, the writing began again. On the wall behind Esther appeared in wet, dripping script, Dr. C. You will die tonight. The doctor stood, trembling. He backed out of the room slowly. Enough, he whispered. This is evil. And he never returned again. But the ghost did, night after night, with more power, more hatred, and a singular obsession. Esther. The townspeople were afraid, not just of the ghost, but of Esther. Whispers turned to accusations. They said she was cursed, a witch, or worse, the devil's bride. Daniel received threats. Children were kept indoors. And the local paper ran a headline, Poltergeist terror continues in Amherst. But the worst was yet to come. One cold evening, as Esther sat silently by the fire, a loud knock echoed through the house. 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate. Daniel opened the door. No one was there. But across the threshold lay a dead rat. Its eyes missing. Its body twisted unnaturally. A note was pinned to its back. "Leave her alone, or you're next." From that night forward, Esther was never left in a room unattended. Even the priest refused to come. His letter simply read, "There are things man should not meddle in. This is one of them." Esther tried to pray, but every time she whispered a psalm, a sharp pain gripped her chest, and blood would trickle from her nose. The ghost hated prayer, hated the cross, hated the light. So they lived in shadow, in fear, and Esther began to hear the ghost's name. It whispered it to her. Bob. Bob. The name echoed in her dreams, in her waking thoughts, in the walls of the house. Bob. She didn't know who he was or what he wanted, but the spirit was no longer just random chaos. It had personality. It had purpose. Bob began answering questions, scratching words into the walls, using matches to write in soot, sometimes through Esther's voice. When asked why he haunted her, the answer was always the same: because I can. But there was more. Layers of rage, sadness, vengeance. Bob said he had died in a fire long ago, in pain, and that he had never found peace. Now, he wanted Esther to feel what he felt: pain, terror, abandonment. One night, as the family sat reading scripture aloud, the lamp exploded, and flames licked up the walls. Esther screamed, "Bob, stop!" And for the first time, the flames died instantly. They were afraid to speak, afraid to move. Bob had heard her, and listened. She had a strange control now, a bond, but it was not love, not friendship. It was a leash, and she didn't know who was holding it. The newspapers caught wind of this strange communication, and suddenly, Esther became a sensation. Reporters traveled from all over Canada, some curious, some mocking, others just hungry for a headline. They interviewed Esther, photographed her, published sketches of the ghost's messages, but fame came with a cost. The haunting grew worse. One night, a journalist sat in her room, mocking the spirit. "Come now," he chuckled. "If you're real, do something impressive." A fork levitated and drove itself into his shoulder. He ran, pleading, screaming that he would sue, but he never did. He never spoke of it again. Esther was blamed, accused of faking it, of staging the events for fame. But Daniel knew better. He had seen the burns, felt the cold, heard the voice whispering in the dark. And one night, he caught Esther levitating. Her body floated 3 feet above the bed, limbs stiff, head back, eyes glowing faintly, and her mouth moving in silent words. He called her name. "Esther!" She fell to the bed like a sack of bones, awake but hollow-eyed. "I don't remember," she whispered. "I don't even know where I go." The town began to turn completely. Windows were shut tight when Esther passed. Mothers pulled their children across the street. Shops refused to serve her. She had become a pariah. Daniel, desperate to protect his family, sent her away again, this time to a relative in Sackville, just a few towns over. He hoped a new place might bring relief. But evil travels, and Bob followed. Within hours of her arrival, plates flew from shelves, doors slammed, and the air turned ice cold. That night, her cousin woke up to find Esther standing at the foot of the bed. Eyes open, but not seeing. Her voice, a whisper not her own. He's here, now, and he's angry. The cousin fled the next morning, and Esther was sent back to Amherst once more. She began to deteriorate. Her hair thinned, she grew pale. Sometimes, her arms bore bite marks, teeth prints that no human could have made. At night, she could be heard speaking in languages she didn't know. Once, she recited a prayer in Latin. Perfectly. A priest confirmed it. Esther never studied Latin. Bob was growing stronger, and so was the fear. Esther became the talk of paranormal investigators. One man, Walter Hubble, an actor turned ghost hunter, moved into the Teed household. He wanted proof. He wanted fame. But what he got was terror. He kept a detailed diary, each entry more disturbing than the last. Day 1, whispering through the floorboards. Sounds like laughter. Day 3, bed rattled violently. Esther's unresponsive voice said, "We're watching." Day 5, I asked Bob to knock once for yes, twice for no. The knocking came from inside the mattress. Walter stayed for weeks, documenting the madness. One night, he claimed to see an invisible force lift Esther from her chair and slam her against the wall. Bruises bloomed instantly across her arms and neck. And then, the ghost spoke. Through the wall. A deep, slow scratch, forming words. She is mine. And though some called it fiction, others believed sails soared. But Esther's life was in pieces. She couldn't keep friends, couldn't leave home. She was a prisoner in her own body, in her own life. Years passed. The attacks continued, though less frequently. Esther grew older, quieter, resigned. Some claimed she was finally free, that the ghost had left her. But Esther knew better. He was waiting for weakness, waiting for her to forget, to slip. One night, during a thunderstorm, Esther felt it again, the cold in her bones, the air pressing down, the silence before the scream, and then the whisper. "Did you miss me?" She wept, not out of fear, but exhaustion. Bob never left. He had simply gone quiet, and in the silence, He became a part of her. Not separate, not foreign, but fused. When she finally passed away in 1912, her grave was left unmarked for fear that he would return. But some say, on stormy nights, if you walk past the old Teed house in Amherst, you can still hear the whispers. Years turned into decades, and yet the legend refused to die. Journalists revisited Amherst. Tourists came hoping for a glimpse of the supernatural, but the house was just a house now. Old, quiet, empty, or so they believed. A local boy, 12 years old, dared to enter it one Halloween night. Armed with a flashlight and bravado, he made it past the crumbling porch, through the rotted door, and into the cold hallway. He swore he heard whispering, saw flickers of candlelight. Then, a voice in his ear. She never left. He ran screaming into the street. No one believed him, except the old ones, who remembered. Esther's story haunted more than just Amherst. Parapsychologists debated it. Skeptics dismissed it. But something about it lingered. A darkness not easily explained. A terror that logic refused to contain. Some said Esther had multiple personalities. Others accused her of fraud. But how do you fake fire in a locked room? How do you scratch names into the ceiling? Even those who didn't believe found themselves watching the shadows a little longer, locking their doors a little tighter. Walter Hubbell's book continued to sell. Decades later, his words still chilled the spine. Esther's name became legend, but not the kind she wanted. A letter was found in a dusty trunk, years after her death. It was signed by Esther. The handwriting, shaky but deliberate. If anyone finds this, I beg you, never go back. She spoke of dreams, of hands pulling her under, of voices promising forever. He said I was chosen, she wrote, that my suffering would feed him, that others would follow. The letter ended abruptly, no signature, no date, but scrawled on the back. In a different hand was a final message. I'm still here. The paper was tested. The ink was real. No forgeries found. And yet, no one could explain the second handwriting. Not even now. Years after Esther's death, a couple moved into the old Teed house. They'd heard the stories, but didn't believe in ghosts. They laughed at the warnings, called it superstition. For a while, things were normal. Then the scratching started. Behind the walls, beneath the floors, always at night. At first, they'd blamed rats, until the writing appeared. "Why did you come?" scrawled across the bathroom mirror in condensation. And then, the dreams. Each night, the wife saw a girl, pale, bruised, mouthing words she couldn't hear, and behind her, a shadow, always closer. The couple reached out to a local historian, hoping to debunk the stories. He agreed to investigate. On his third visit, he brought a tape recorder, left it running overnight in the kitchen. When he played it back, the room fell silent. There was a voice, low, ragged. "It's mine now." The historian refused to return. The couple moved out within a week. They left furniture behind, even their wedding album. No one blamed him. The house sat vacant, windows boarded, lawn overgrown. But lights were still seen at night. A filmmaker once tried to document the story. She wanted to shoot inside the house, capture the atmosphere, tell Esther's side. They were 2 days into filming when the lead actor quit. He claimed he saw someone standing behind him while rehearsing alone. A man, tall, featureless. His line, "I don't believe in ghosts." That night, a mirror shattered in the hallway. No one was near it. The footage from that day corrupted. The sound warped the video. Static, the production was cancelled. The director never spoke of it again. But crew members said she started sleeping with the lights on. Some say poltergeists fade with time, that their energy burns out. But in Amherst, time only thickened the air. Locals still walk on the opposite side of the street. Children dare each other to touch the front steps. No one stays long. A priest once attempted to bless the grounds. He brought holy water, incense, scripture. Midway through the prayer, his Bible caught fire. No one could explain it, but his hands, they were covered in blisters for weeks. He never came back. There's a theory among those who study the paranormal that places can remember, that trauma imprints like fingerprints on glass. Amherst is one such place. Esther was the match, but something darker was the fuel. Maybe it came before her. Maybe it still waits for someone new. Every few years, the story resurfaces. A podcast, a blog post, a daring investigator. They come with cameras, microphones, curiosity, and they leave changed. Some never speak of it again. If you visit the old neighborhood, there's nothing grand to see. Just cracked sidewalks, weeds, a faint hush in the wind. But some nights, when the moon is thin and the wind still, you might hear it. A knock, then 2, then 3, always 3. And if you turn, you might see her, a girl in old-fashioned clothes, standing still, eyes wide, mouth opening to speak, but no sound This isn't just a ghost story, it's a warning about what happens when pain festers, when no one listens, when the walls themselves remember. Esther died with secrets, with trauma, with something clinging to her, and maybe, just maybe, it never left. So if you ever hear scratching in the walls or whispers in the dark, don't answer, don't speak. And whenever you do, never say her name.